It's funny to think now, but at the time, back in 1993, Jurassic Park was seen as something of a risky proposition. Despite having some pretty heavyweight talent attached to the project, there were still concerns that Jurassic Park wouldn't connect with audiences, that special effects technology could not deliver on the promise of the film, and that ultimately this could be a huge commercial disaster. And the same attitude was true amongst the toy world, as a supporting toy line for Jurassic Park was pitched to all the major toy brands, many of whom passed on the prospect because they felt that they couldn't market dinosaurs and make them their own. And of course there is a very famous story of how one executive at Kenner saw the potential to brand Jurassic Park figures as a uniquely Kenner product by putting that JP logo on their dinosaurs and of course adding a few little innovative touches such as the dino damage. And the rest, as they say, is history. Of course, the film was a huge success, still spawning sequels to this very day. And of course, the toy line and subsequent toy lines for each of the following films have also been massively successful. And so today, for Flashback Friday, I'm going to go all the way back to 1993 and look at the Jurassic Park Jungle Explorer vehicle. This vehicle has become slightly iconic in cinema simply because it features in one of the most important and tense scenes in the film. So let's start by looking at the packaging, and as ever, of course, this is early 90s illustration, which I think is absolutely fantastic. I'm a huge fan of artwork like this. I really miss it on modern toys, but I think they've done a beautiful job here. This artwork is obviously very evocative, very fun. Of course, it doesn't resemble anything that actually happens in the film, but nevertheless, this is very striking, incredibly action-packed, and instantly sells this product to me. And of course, it looks absolutely fantastic on display. On the reverse, we have a photograph of the toy in a dinosaur-inspired diorama. Of course, we have the T-Rex toy there as well, also on display. But again, this is very exciting. I think they've done a very nice job of the photography here. And it, of course, still very presentable and displayable if you want to flip it around this way. Now, of course, my box has taken a bit of a beating over the years, so it doesn't look its best, but as you can see, the images themselves are very colourful and fun. Now, when you take it out of the packaging, it is all in one piece, fully assembled. There's nothing for you to put together. It is all there, ready to go. And I have to say, surprisingly, for a toy of this time, it is remarkably authentic. It is very true to source. Toys from this time period are well known for taking creative liberties with their representations of source material and often give them a lot more action features and radically changing the designs. But here, it's fairly faithful. Certainly, the front of the vehicle is pretty much spot on to what we see in the film. I think towards the rear of the vehicle, there's definitely a few more creative choices have come into play to make it a lot more toyetic. The most glaring example being those two missiles stuck on the end of the vehicle there. We will touch on that a little bit later. But the only other major difference is the wheels. I think the wheel trims don't have that bright yellow, which is a shame, but otherwise this is pretty solid stuff. The design of the vehicle is fairly straightforward and quite a simple design, but it is all enhanced by the paint applications and the stickers that are on the vehicle to give it a lot of colour, a lot of pizzazz, and make it a lot more interesting than perhaps the base mould actually is. And after all these years, I have to say, this is still a very nice vehicle to put on display. Something about the colours and the shape of it just look really fun and inviting and quite exciting. And I think it just makes a very nice visual impact on your shelf. And I think it's a testament that sometimes a simple design can be the most effective if it is treated correctly and capitalised on. And I think they've done that here with the correct paint apps and the nice sculpting. All in all, this is a very effective toy. Now, whilst the windscreen and sunroof are made of a clear plastic, the side windows are empty so you can manipulate your figures once they're in their seats. And the steering wheel is movable as well, which is a nice little touch. Sadly, it doesn't actually link up to the wheel, so it doesn't change the direction of the wheels, which is a shame, but still, this is quite cool. Now, in the front of the vehicle, we have two seats where two figures can be seated, but at the rear of the vehicle, it actually opens up and you can use this to store equipment, backpacks, or maybe even a small dinosaur. And to place your action figures inside the vehicle, you simply lift up the sunroof, pose your figures into the seated position and slide them in. The sunroof and the seats are broad enough to easily accommodate any of the human characters in the line. And these figures scale very nicely with each other and the various vehicles and playsets in the line, so it all looks pretty good when you put them together. And I'm sure it goes without saying, but of course you can move the vehicle forwards and backwards. Now sadly you can't really steer the wheels, they only roll forwards and backwards, there is no steering, but nevertheless this is quite effective. All that's left then is to introduce some dinosaurs into the equation, and you can start to see how you can build up a pretty effective and fun diorama with all of these toys, and they all complement each other very, very nicely, and I think this is when the vehicle really starts to come into its own. Lots of the dinosaurs in this line had various action features and sound effects, so this can make a pretty dynamic area for play, especially as you have them menacing the characters in the vehicle through the windows like this. And whilst not all the dinosaur toys had sound effects, all of them did have some sort of animatronic effect, which is just really effective. Even to this day, these are still really, really fun toys. And so we come to the first of the action features on the vehicle. As you can see, the Velociraptor here is really working hard to destroy the bonnet of the vehicle, and yes indeed, it does come off, it is removable. There's always something remarkably fun about destruction in your toys, especially if you can put them back together again, and this is wonderful. It's nice to have this little bit of detail here where we can see the engine that's been damaged and ripped into and exposed. This looks really fun indeed. And the second and last action feature for the vehicle is the fold-out rocket launcher. Now, you probably don't remember the scene in the film where they pull a massive rocket launcher out of the vehicle and start shooting at dinosaurs, and with good reason, it doesn't exist. But a toy does need its action features, so here we can place our figures at the end of the vehicle, have them take one of the giant missiles, which is almost the size of one of the figures themselves, place it in the missile launcher, and of course we can fire it into the jungle or at the T-Rex. It is a spring-loaded projectile, so when you finally do press the button, it has quite a lot of force to it and travels a fair distance. Now I guess the toy company, or perhaps it was the film company, was slightly squeamish about advertising the fact that this is a firing weapon on this vehicle, especially since it doesn't appear in the film. So interestingly, on the packaging they've named it a blood sample missile. Not entirely sure what that means or what it's supposed to achieve, but I suppose it neutralises the threat of this being just destructive. But before we wrap up for today, I'm going to take a quick look at a couple of the figures from this line, because a lot of the human characters from this line bear very little resemblance to their on-screen counterparts. Although I have to say, in the case of Dr. Alan Grant, the figure and the likeness aren't worlds apart. I actually think this is pretty decent for 1993. Tim, on the other hand, fares less well. In toy form, he's a lot more masculine. He seems to have a gun belt or a gun pouch around him, which is strange. And the likeness is not really there. But these figures are still a lot of fun. They have just 5 points of articulation, but they stand at roughly 5 inches tall, and they have a lot of fun accessories, usually coming with a mini dinosaur and some sort of dino capturing device. In the case of Alan Grant here, he does come with this backpack and a strange bomb looking device that I'm not quite sure how that helps him catch anything, but I'm sure it's very humane even though it doesn't look it. And I did want to point out a very strange feature on this backpack. At the bottom there is a button that if you press it flicks this switch up. I guess it's supposed to hurl something towards dinosaurs, but I'm not entirely sure how this is meant to be used to capture dinosaurs. I have no idea. But all in all, this is a very, very fun toy line, especially if you were a kid the first time around collecting these toys. You can see right away that this is a really dynamic, very diverse set of toys, and it just oozes a sense of fun and potential creativity. Between all the various action features and the different kind of characters that you can interact, I think this is a really fun line, and in particular, I've always been a huge fan of the Jungle Explorer. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like and remember to subscribe as there'll be plenty more videos soon.